Ladies and gentlemen, Reili, Avner, Gali, Avrum, Job Cohen, Erik van den Burg, he had to leave already, Joel Cohen, Anat Sultan Dadon, friends. My name is Lars Ebert. I'm program coordinator at Castrum Peregrini, and on behalf of my colleagues Michael de Fuster and Frans Damman, I want to very warmly welcome you for the opening of the exhibition Family Affair. When entering the exhibition, you may have seen at the bar a fantastic photograph that Reili took of Michael, Frans, and myself, and she gave it the title The Castrum Peregrini Family. Those of you who read Hebrew will have already read it, but it says the Castrum Peregrini Family. And indeed, our living and working together has much of a family, and that is not all too surprising. If you look at the genesis of this organization, it is so closely linked to this place and to the people that have loaded it with meaning. Most of you may know that it all started during the occupation of the Netherlands, when Jews and other minorities were deported by the Nazis or had to go into hiding. The Dutch painter Giselle back then rented one floor in the old part of this very building, where she organized, together with the German poet Wolfgang Frommel, the hiding of a small group of Jewish youngsters that survived there. I know that Reili's mother, who is also present today, welcome, was hidden herself in Lake by, amongst others, Ria Huizer-Verhoef, who is also present, I think. Hello. Reili's mother today lives in Israel, but came over for the opening. She knows and has experienced that there were countless stories of hiding. The specific story of this place, of Castrum Peregrini, is that the group of hiders got artistic assignments from Giselle and Wolfgang Frommel to mentally survive seclusion. You could say that they received a clandestine education underground in drawing, making poems, in literature and history. One of the hiders wrote in his memories, quote, "As long as we write poems, nothing can happen to us." After the war, the group stayed together as a family, so to speak. They realized that what they had experienced in hiding under circumstances that forced them to stay together, that this could be beneficial for them and others also in freedom, and they set up an organization with the name Castrum Peregrini, which was a nom de guerre, the secret name of the safe house. It referred to a castle at the seashore of Israel in Haifa that was never taken by the enemies, but was left voluntarily. A good omen, so to speak, and they might probably have thought, if we leave this place, we leave it voluntarily. The name also stands for a tension that was, and probably still is, significant for the inhabitants of this place, back then and now. Castrum Peregrini translates literally as the castle of the pilgrims, which seems to be a contradiction, as pilgrims are on the move. They don't build homes, let alone castles. They don't accumulate possessions. After the war, Giselle was able to buy the whole building bit by bit, and thereby made it possible that the group from the war and new generations of pilgrims, like artists, thinkers, poets, could come and stay for shorter or longer, live and work together, and experience or reflect on what art can do to become a human being or to stay one, to use culture to create your mental freedom and friendship. Giselle died in 2013 at the age of 100 years in her beloved studio on the top floor, right above here. She outlived all her hiders. We were lucky to live with her for years, and it truly felt like we were a family. And, as she said in one of the last television interviews she gave at age 99, she was happy that she could see that it was going on, that the younger generation used the place to address what was urgent to them. We have built our activities today on some core values that we extracted from the history of Castrum Peregrini. What was crucial for Giselle and her hiders in times of persecution is relevant still today for our societies and for us as individuals: freedom, friendship, and culture. None of these three represents a guiding principle without the others. In our exhibitions, lectures, events, and projects of the last years, we have explored these values one by one. We started with freedom in 2012. In 2013, we addressed friendship and its role in society, and when it came to culture, we realized that what defines us as a culture, as a group, and as individuals is our memory, our personal memory and our collective memory. In our memory lies the key to what we are and what we can be. In the conscious dealing with it, in deconstructing it and constructing future memory, we actively shape society. We need to create awareness of this, otherwise our memories and our respective identities are used and abused by politicians and by the media. Family Affair is the second exhibition in the Memory Machine program. We invited the exhibition for various reasons. I guess the most important one is that we believe that collective memory and its relation to personal memory is at the heart of many conflicts in the world. And sadly, the conflict in the Middle East, in Israel and Palestine, is one of the most prominent ones. Galia Guazev writes in her curatorial statement for this exhibition, quote, "The personal stories and the colorful photographs raise questions about the private and collective identities in Israeli society, which suffers from national, religious, economic, and ethnic rifts." For the work that you see in this exhibition and for her lifetime achievement, Reli Avrahami has just this month received the Enrique Kablin Award in Photography for life work by the Israeli Museum in Jerusalem. The jury arguments that, I quote, "The portraits and family photos of Reli Avrahami are carved in the Israeli collective memory and accompany the view of the Israeli society of itself. The photographer-artist, active since the mid-80s, is counted with the elite journalism photographers in Israel. She puts in front of her camera people and faces from every social class, age, sex, origin, and captures them with persistent loyalty to her aesthetic agenda. Whether if it's in her Israeli family documentation project or in other projects, Avrahami is determined to implement the fundamental principles of social photography. Every photo is followed by biographical details of the object, and every image she makes is an important report about life in Israel these days. Avner Avrahami, next to Reli, wrote all the texts with the photos of Reli. He's a journalist, editor, graphic designer, and internet entrepreneur. Today, he's the editor of Odyssey, a magazine for science and philosophy. Besides that, in 2011, he founded SpotAd, a startup in the mobile area. From 2002 to 2012, he took part in the Family Affair project in Haaretz weekly supplement together with his wife. Galia Guazev, also in the first row here, is photographer and curator. She has had numerous solo and group exhibitions in Israel and abroad, and curated, among others, local testimony that is presented in parallel to the World Press Photo in Eretz Israel Museum, and she received the Konstantina Photography Award for an Israeli artist on behalf of the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. I'm happy that all three of them are here today. They will be available for you to answer questions privately after the talk, and Avner will say a few words about his scientific findings. Well, I leave the quotes away, your scientific findings, during the drinks downstairs. And on Sunday, this Sunday at 17 hours, they will present recent work of theirs in a gallery talk. Please register by mail if you want to attend. When we started our recent program Memory Machine, We Are What We Remember in September 2014, of which this exhibition is part, we edited a journal which you can take home for free, it's out there, in which Avraham Burg contributed a column that expresses brilliantly how personal memory is entangled with collective memory and how that shapes our identity. So we are very happy that Burg is the opening speaker today. Avraham is probably well known to most of you as an author, as a politician, former speaker of the Knesset. Very shortly, he was also president of Israel, as an activist and leading intellectual in Israel and abroad. The recent activities of Burg show us that who you are, what you remember and what you forget is not God-given. It is not a static thing, not a destiny. Rather, one has to time and again reassess why we do what we do and be open for change and for personal growth. You have to reinvent yourself to stay relevant to society and true to yourself. Be prepared to make mistakes and therefore be vulnerable and think out of the box. Well, those are bold words, but I guess all of you who know Avraham will recognize these characteristics. I was lucky to have the opportunity to meet Avraham regularly in the last 3 years for talks about belonging and diversity at the Bruno Kreisky Forum in Vienna, where I represent Castrum Peregrini. And during that time, in the conversations in the group and privately, my respect for him has changed into friendship. And I was, time and again, deeply touched by his human concern for the individuals he works and lives with and for society. I'm thankful, Avraham, that you are here to engage with us today and tomorrow in conversations about all that concerns you and us. Freedom, friendship, and culture. Please.
Lars, I love the eulogy you had on me now. I think it was Henry Kissinger was introduced in such an over-flattering manner, and he said, only my parents were here, my father would have loved it, and my mother would even believe it. So thank you, and Franz and Michael for the beautiful hospitality. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Cohen, Madam Consul, Anat, the Abrahamis, Avner, I admire you. I mean, to come with your mother-in-law to an exhibition overseas, I mean, that's a virtue by itself. I mean, we have to take a picture of your family together, okay?
I'm an orphan.
Yeah. Reli and Galia and all the rest of you, thank you very much. Since I was, for a couple of years, I was the speaker of the Israeli parliament, and I always wondered why the deliberations in our parliament are so long. I don't know about the deliberations in the Dutch parliament. And then I once asked the question, I got the following answer. The deliberations are so long because everything was already said, but not by everyone. So since Lars already said what I wanted to say, I just want to repeat it in the next half an hour or so, and I'll stop the minute the first one along the walls will collapse, and then I see it as an indication that it's too long. But actually, I would like, with your permission, to use the Avrahami's fantastic piece of work as a window into a reality we don't always know. I mean, when I will ask you intuitively, what is Israel? So it's about wars and settlements and conflicts and religion and this and that. Something bad. Some will remember oranges and volunteers in the 60s. Oh, that was fantastic, but as Lars said, memories are long gone, and I don't remember what the memories are all about. Okay, but maybe Israel is, like any other social realm, is something deeper and more augmented and more complicated and more sophisticated and more human and simple. And I'd like to use this opportunity of this exhibition in order to introduce to you the Israel the way I see it through the Avrahami's prism. And I'll begin with an anecdote. Moshe, you know Moshe? Okay, Moshe was bar mitzvahed. Bar mitzvahed is a verb in Hebrew, okay? He was bar mitzvahed, confirmation at the age of 13, and for a present for his bar mitzvah, his parents promised him a tour around the world, which means in Israeli terms, 10 days charter flight to Europe. Okay, so they take the charter flight to Europe, and here they come to Europe, and the first day they go out of the Schiphol airport, and Moshe turns to his father and said, Daddy, tell me, are all the people around here Jewish? He said, oh no, they're not Jewish. He said, okay, not Jewish, non-Jews, no problem. Next day they go to the Kloten airport in Zurich. They go out of the airport. Moshe turns to his father and said, tell me, all the people around here Jewish? He said, oh no, they're not Jews, they're all Gentiles. He said, okay, Gentiles, no problem. Next day it's Charles de Gaulle. All the people, same question. The answer is no, they are Goyim, they're not Jews. Every day the same question, every day the same answer. Here they come, the last day, the Leonardo da Vinci airport in Rome. They walk out of the airport. Moshe turns to his father and says, Daddy, tell me, are all the people around here Jews? He said, Moshe, what's wrong with you? I told you time and again, what are you, stupid? You're simple. I told you time and again, they're not Jews, they're Gentiles, they're Goyim. Said Moshe, poor Goyim, they are so scattered around the world. Okay, now, when you look at this exhibition, you might say, poor Israelis, they are so scattered around Israel. I mean, it is such a complicated social reality coming from so many places. And actually, this exhibition asks us two questions. The first is, what is the Israeli reality? And the second, why it is so attractive, positively and negatively, by the eyes and by the ears and by the attention of many. I mean, all over the world, it's a media coverage and political coverage and others. It's somewhere there, maybe not number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 4 and on, we give a good fight for the place. So as for the second question, that's not the forum. Maybe you are the forum. I'm not the speaker for it. But for the first question, the Avraham is giving an answer. What is the Israeliness? Now, I'm one who belongs to a kind of a distinct species in Israel, which I read Haaretz only. What is Haaretz? I mean, what's the equivalent of Haaretz here? What is the liberal, progressive, declining paper here? Exactly, whatever. I mean, it's a declining presence, and I read Haaretz only. Now, like everybody else around the world, when you read a paper, which is not online but a paper line, everybody has his or her favorite section. I go for sports, but I always say I go for literature. What do you read first? Literature. Yeah, for sure. Okay? So first I go for sports, then I go for the rest of it, and everybody goes for cooking. But when it came, for many, many years, when it came to the Weekend magazine, which is is still a fantastic magazine of the Haaretz, the second choice of all was the Avrahami's section. The first was, as I told you, was sports. Okay, since my team is always losing, I just wanted to know by how much. It was nothing more than that. But, and why is that? They had at the Weekend magazine, at the back page of the beautiful edited Weekend magazine, there was a one-pager with all the pictures and photographs you saw downstairs. And this is actually a polyphonic message. An eyewitness and a writer. Somebody who documents the thing, and another one who tells you what do you see. And not necessarily what you see is what you see. So you need Reli with her eyes and Avner with his pen actually to give you a composition of what you see. And this is something very interesting because they do not always say the same thing. But when you look at it, whomever you are, it reminds you of yourself. It's the puppy at the corner and the ill-organized electric wire that my mother would never allow a picture to be taken with something not perfectly organized and orchestrated in the picture. She always quotes something which is out of ordinary and therefore very ordinary and therefore very human, which all of us, I mean, who lives in a perfect palace but in Castrum, Peregrini, okay? I mean, all of us are having normal apartments and I'll do the dishes in the morning, okay? So they came in the evening and they got me with a sink full of dishes. And this is actually, when you look at it, the open book and something which I didn't pay attention to, it actually told me a lot about the people, but since I identified myself in the picture, it told me about myself only. So actually every weekend I wrote a piece about a stranger, and I love gossip. I mean, it's so beautiful. I mean, for free. I mean, in Haaretz, I mean, the most qualitative, intellectual paper in the country, but it's an official gossip, so it's kosher. And at the same time, it's actually about me, because I learned something about myself. And then when you ask yourself what's in common of all of these people, I will say what we have in common is that maybe we don't have anything in common anymore. And this is a fantastic common denominator. And I want to dig a little bit into it. The Israeli society is a very interesting, evolving, kinetic mosaic. It keeps changing. It's never the same picture. It's never the same composition. It's never the same creation. You look at it once, then you come to revisit it a week later or a year later, and it's a different composition done with the same ingredients, with the same components. It's a different picture. And it is not anymore as used to be or acclaimed to be at the 50s, the 40s and the 50s, a monolithic melting pot society. Oh no, it is not. People said, listen, it's too hot in the pot, please stop melting us. I mean, we love it, but do it to somebody else. We do not be to be melted. We would like to preserve our identities, be it our personal identity, our communal previous or current identity, or some other associations we have. And actually, Israel of today is a federation of identities. And you cannot really say there is one identity, but one which I'll come to that in a second. Now, when you walk in each and every society, and here I depart, with your permission, I depart the exhibition, and I depart the masterpiece of the Avrahamites for a second to go to a different place. And we'll come back to the exhibition in a while. When you go to every society and you give an introduction to the society, every society is having cracks in the utopia between have and have not, between immigrants and born in the place, between various ethnic groups, between observant and non-observant, between men and women, between north and south. I mean, every society is having its own problems, and the Israeli society is no different in that sense, that we have people who were born in the place, like my mother. From my mother's side, I'm an 8th, 9th generation Israeli, and my father, who came from Dresden, and a 1st generation, so one refugee and one Mayflower Israeli family. I mean, no wonder a mutation like this is born out of it. So you have tensions between veterans and newcomers, between Ashkenazim, which is the Christian hemisphere Jews, and Sfaradim, which are Muslim hemisphere Jews. You have between have and have not. You have between Jews and Arabs, religious and non-religious. You have it. This was the classical introduction of Israel during the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And then in the 80s, something was cooking differently. And all of a sudden, all of these schisms merged into one. And if I will ask you today, those of you who know Israel, about a typical somebody, and I will tell you, she is secular, highly educated, her income is above the average, she teaches she's a university graduate, she lives in Tel Aviv. And she is secular, does she vote left or right? Of course she votes for Meretz, for the civil rights movement. But if somebody else is a Sephardi, lives in the periphery, low income, never went to the university, is he religious or non-religious? Automatically he's religious. Something happened, and all of these schisms that in various societies are different schisms became one. The group, the ethnic, the identity of the ethnic of the group, the economy of the group, the ideological, religious, and other cultural commitments of the members of the group actually merged or fused into one thing. And all of a sudden, it's very, very difficult to deal with issues and to say, let's deal with the economy separately, and with the territory separately, and with the religious separately. You want to give back a piece of the territory. Just a real estate agreement between Israel and Palestine, nothing serious. You take this spot and I take this corner, and that's it. Immediately jumps a rabbi and tells you, no, it's God forbidden. So something which is a political negotiation becomes a religious affair. And I can take it back and forth with every dimension you want. and tell you actually that this society is more splitted than a normal society. It is so splitted that on top of the ground I just described, in the last couple of years there is another layer. And this layer is very important. There are new crises which I'm not at all sure people at the West experience them on a daily basis. Israel is divided into 4 slices, and from these 4 pizza slices, it's still very difficult to make one family pizza, because the mushrooms do not talk to the pepperoni, and the pepperoni is not in touch with the olives, etc., slices. The first slice is the God group, people who see the prime source of authority and the prime source of commitment as the divine source of authority, God at their center. They might be Jews or Muslims, but they see God is the central piece of their being. The second group, which is sometimes overlapping the first one, but it's a separate one, is not always religious, sometimes yes, but for them, the territories, the land, the sanctity of the soil is the single most important organizing idea. The third group is the group which takes vows and commits itself, life and death, to the concept of the state. For the Letiferet Medinat Israel, to glorify the state of Israel. It's the statehood which is the most important central piece. And the last and declining, shrinking group, which of course I belong to, is the group of the individual, the human being as the center of being. So you have gods and territory and state and human, and we do not yet talk to each other. Very difficult. Now, let's go back, and I will say that for certain people in these groups, for these positions, Spinoza was expelled from the Jewish community. I mean, we are living in one place with a lot of tensions, and we do not break away, which is a kind of an oxymoron. How we do it, why we do it, I don't know, but it is there. Some will say, and I will not argue, that it is the external animosity that unifies the internal reality. Some will say it is something else. I'll leave it out. I mean, let's leave it as a question, but it is there. It is a splitted society with segments not really communicating with each other, and at the same time sticks together. Let's go back to the exhibition. The first thing is, it looks as if most of them are human beings. I mean, but those I really know, which I cannot really give no, they're all people. They're all people, normal people, average people, having real life. And all of them came from so many corners of the universe. I mean, from 70 different exiles, from 70 different communities, from 70 different corners of the creation. Each is coming with a baggage of 2,000 years of dreams. And then you wake up one morning in Israel, and you realize that your dream collides with your next neighbor dream. I wanted this and she wanted that. I had in mind one vision and they had in mind a totally different picture. And it's an ongoing collision between dreams and wakening time. And when you take it together, you have a feeling, looking at this picture, that the Israeli society, or many in Israel, are on a raft which departed the original ports but did not yet arrive. Which means we departed the Muslim world, we departed the Christian hemisphere, we didn't yet arrive to the Middle East. We are somewhere in the middle, stick together with an ocean around us, and the navigation, well, let's see what the elections will bring with it. So it brings me from the concept of the Israelis to the concept of the Avrahamis. That's again a very built-in oxymoronic approach to life, because it is a very, very, very pure positive journalism on identity which is defined by negativism. Let me explain this sentence, okay? When you ask an Israeli, there is no average Israeli. Am I an average Israeli? Come on. My mom was sure that I'm a prince. So, I'm sure she was a queen, but this is something else, okay? When you ask an average Israeli, what are you? He will give you or she will give you an answer which starts with the word lo. Ani lo dati, I'm not religious. Ani lo charedi, I'm not an ultra-Orthodox. Ani lo Aravi, I'm not an Arab. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that. And you have a feeling when you collect all of these no's that somewhere the positive resource of identity is exhausted, and many Israelis' identity is a negative identity. I define myself by negating somebody else. So a lot of the internal Israeli identities are based on some negative something. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not him, I'm not that. Here come the Avrahamites are coming, and with a very positive, loving, warm way, define all of these no's. And when you look at all of these no's, you realize that maybe all of these no's are something very interesting, that the common denominator of this society is that I cannot define myself without the other. I have a need for the other, even the other that I negate, because the other is my definer. Imagine me who is know this and know this and know this, and there is nobody out there. I'm alone. Who am I if I'm alone? I'm lost. Give me somebody to oppose. Give me somebody to disagree with. And a lot of it corresponds, and I will not go into it, though I'm ready to come again if I'll be invited. Take it as a hint, okay? To talk to you why I think that the culture or the civilization, the culture of disagreement and polemic is the only common denominator between Jews. I mean, once you agree with me, either me or you are not Jewish, or at least the conversation is not Jewish. Once we disagree, now it's open, now it's a different kind of a realm. But having said that, it is not just the exhibition exhibits how the other defines me, but it goes to some other place. There were two surveys done 4 or 5 years ago, international surveys. One in Israeli one, I'm sorry. Many studies, and one very serious done, tells that more than 70% of the Israelis believe that Israel goes to the wrong place, to the wrong direction. I mean, some will say this wrong, there is no agreement which is the wrong direction, but there is a collective understanding that not only it's the wrong direction, but it's the wrong direction to the verge of destruction, of the end of the country, this vision or that vision, my philosophy, somebody else's philosophy. It's a very severe reading of the future of the place. At the same time, at every international study which measures the level of happiness of nations, Israelis are at the 14th place, between the 12th and the 14th place in the world, of being the 14th happiest nation in the world. Yeah, well, I take it that we are a little bit more happy than Afghanistan, but being more happy than so many other countries, when you read the headlines, you know, who are we? What kind of realities we are facing? So how does it work together? How does it work together that 70% of us are sure that we are going to the wrong direction and we are so happy about it, okay? How does it work together? Very difficult to answer, but here, I don't know whether it was, who brought it first, was it Avner or Reli or both, but at each and every portrait downstairs, each and every weekend, there was a barometer of happiness. They asked the individuals how happy you are about this, about that. I would say that most of your victim clients, subjects were quite happy. I mean, I don't remember 10% who were totally unhappy and desperate, etc., which actually corresponds with this international finding about why the Israelis are so happy about it. And the more I look at it, the more I think about my mom. We used to ask my mom, "Mom, are you an optimist or a pessimist?" She said, "Mom, me? Of course I'm an optimist. Today is much better than tomorrow." And this kind of mom's optimism is something there. Israelis compare today not to others necessarily, and not to potential future, but where have we been just 40 years ago, 70 years ago, 150 years ago, compared to the past. We are living in a fantastic time. As for the future, it's the wrong direction, but today is a perfect day. And this actually brings us to the next level. Here, before, my mother-in-law came from France, and they're living in their little place in Jerusalem in a kind of a very Frenchy Parisian salon. And they don't really understand what's going on, that those that are living almost 50 years in the country. So the first thing I did with the Avraham album came out of both 6 copies of it. 1 for my family and 5 for my mother-in-law, because it's very difficult for her to understand the Israeli reality. But by the 5th copy, she's there. Okay? I mean, but we deal a lot. I mean, we do a lot of working about it because there is a feeling, and this is something that I really learned from a lot of conversations that I'm having vis-a-vis this matzav mishpachti, family affair, that this is not just an Israeli affair. It's a very universalistic general exhibition. It's about every human being all over the place. Because I remember that once Avner said, we first documented only people who had roof over their heads. And then we took somebody, a homeless, on the bench in the boulevard, right? Yes. Which is actually, the sky is the roof. If the sky is the roof, it's not a physical one, it's a worldly one. Because everybody, we are all sharing the same sky. And when we say this is actually about a new world order, they call it family affair. Is the family the same family? Not at all sure. The new family values, families of 1s and families of 2s and families of 3s. I mean, when I was a kid, every Ashkenazi kid had a mother and father. We hardly had any grandparents because they were all perished at the war. All the Sephardi kids had grandparents, parents, and themselves. And that's it. Today, when I'm going to my children's or my grandchildren's schools meeting, I mean, if a child doesn't have 4 mothers, 3 fathers, 22 grandparents, he's not normal, he's not normative, he's not sharing. I mean, the new family is something which is, you have to see it in order to understand it, and just go down and look at it, and you see so many formations of families, and you realize it happens in Tel Aviv, and it happens in Haifa, and it happens in the periphery, it happens in Amsterdam, and it happens in Scheveningen, it happens wherever it happens. It's very universal, because actually there is something like this all around the world and much deeper. And each and every society, especially the European one we are struggling with, there is always somebody else who is not like me. There is always a stranger. There is always an other. There is always somebody who is different than me. And in a way, if there are so many different individuals, am I the other for them? The answer is yes. Nobody is the it. Nobody is the place, because just us together. All the othernesses, how do you say it? All the other, whatever, okay, whatever. Only when you collect the mosaic of all the others, you have a full picture of a society. There is no society with one segment missing. There is no full composition with one color not presented. Human color, or ideological color, or philosophical one. And therefore, an exhibition like this, it's a blessing that it goes around the world, because it helps in each and every society. And we are kind of a moving circus. We've been to Austria already together, and we are here. And who knows where this exhibition will carry them and carry us. But whomever sees it must realize that this is an exhibition that while you watch all the others, you understand yourself. And you must take a position, what is my attitude toward all of these other people who are actually helping me to define myself? And having said that, I love it. I see your pride through the photography and your happiness. And when I see you, it's much more difficult for me to be afraid from you and therefore to hate you. Because I like you through the Avrahamis. I mean, there is not even one individual I had any resentment, though I take it that in the street we could jump on each other and, I don't know what, do horrible things to each other, i.e. tell the truth to each other, okay? So this is actually a kind of an exhibition which should be part of the social vaccines against the modern phobias. And in each and every place in which the phobias or the contamination of phobias is heavily presented, vaccines like this are necessary. And when I say this, I don't think there should be any other place. I mean, I don't know in the world, but especially here in Holland, in Netherlands, but this Castrum Peregrini. I mean, it's not just the legacy of Giselle and what happened here during the war, in which a courageous individual, by saving 3 kids, actually more than 3, but 3 were the pillars of the work, she saved humanity. And she saved people who were not like her. She saved people who were perceived by the collective understanding and the collective wisdom and the collective morality as others should be excommunicated or perished, God forbid, or who knows what. And she said, no, humanity is about something else. Humanity is about containment. Humanity is about all inclusive, all the people included in our reality. And the fact that she lived till 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, and this place is active, and dozens of people are coming and listening to this message, it means, A, that she was right 70 years ago, and the mission is not yet accomplished. And when I look at all of it together, I will say that through the Castrum Peregrini and the work that Lars and Franz and Michael are doing, and the Avrahamis are doing in a different part of the world, and I take it many of you are doing wherever you are, we actually offering the modern, troubled reality of the West an alternative. It's an alternative that by the end of the day, we can call it a family affair. The family of humanity, the family of human beings, the family of people who have a good heart, even for people, and especially for people who are different than them. And for this and for more, I'm grateful for the place and grateful for the Avrahamis for the opportunities to be with you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Avraham. I want to invite you to see the exhibition downstairs, talk with the Avrahamis and with Gali, get a drink, and then a bit later, Avner will say a few words downstairs, and we'll just stay and talk to one another, to the other. Thank you.
La tomare di